Right now, thousands of skilled track maintenance jobs are sitting unfilled, while America's rail network quietly decays beneath the trains that still run on it. More than 140,000 miles of track depend on specialized crews, welders, trackmen, maintenance-of-way workers, and the people who know how to do this work are vanishing faster than the industry can replace them. The pay is strong. A degree isn't required. And still, the positions go empty. So what's driving an essential workforce out of an industry that literally cannot function without them? And what happens to the railroad they're leaving behind? In 2024, the median annual wage for a rail track laying and maintenance equipment operator reached $71,737. That breaks down to roughly $31.57 an hour, with many employers advertising rates up to $48 an hour. To put those figures in perspective, compare them to other skilled blue-collar professions. Electricians earn a median annual salary of $62,350. Plumbers, HVAC technicians, and industrial welders generally make between $51,000 and $63,000 a year. A track worker stepping onto the railroad ballast for the first time can immediately out-earn experienced hands in almost every other trade. They can do this without carrying student loans or spending a single day in a college lecture hall. Yet the workforce continues to shrink. Between 2014 and 2024, the total number of active track laying and maintenance operators in the United States fell by 30%, dropping from over 11,500 down to roughly 8,100. Even when Class 1 carriers offer sign-on incentives ranging from $10,000 to $20,000, many of those openings sit vacant for months on end. If the money is there, why is the pipeline running dry? Why does a lucrative path with almost no entry barriers fail to attract applicants? The answers lie in the daily reality of the work itself, where grueling conditions and systemic operational changes have turned these well-paying positions into jobs that very few people are willing to take. The scale of the system itself is what makes this labor shortage so consequential. The United States rail network spans more than 140,000 miles of track, forming a vast grid that reaches almost every corner of the nation. This massive footprint is not a static asset. It is an active, high-capacity system operating day and night. Across these routes, trains carry billions of tons of freight annually, moving agricultural goods, raw materials, and consumer products. At the same time, these very same corridors support passenger services, carrying millions of commuter and intercity rail passengers across regional and national lines. An infrastructure network of this size behaves differently than almost any other physical asset. A highway can sometimes sit for years with minimal intervention, but a railroad track cannot. It is a sensitive mechanical system. Steel rails expand in summer heat and contract in winter cold. Heavy wooden and concrete ties decay from moisture and physical stress. The crushed stone ballast underneath shifts and degrades under the weight of passing trains. Every single mile requires continuous physical upkeep, inspection, and repair. Without daily manual labor, the physical tracks immediately begin to degrade. Because the network is so large, the shortage of workers ripples quickly. Maintaining 140,000 miles of track requires an immense volume of daily work. A standard industry benchmark suggests that a fully staffed maintenance crew can safely service between 1.5 and 2 miles of track per day. Keeping the entire national network operational demands thousands of active crew days every single week. When those crews are missing, the maintenance backlog grows. The size of the network is exactly why the labor gap matters. It multiplies the consequence of every vacant position, turning a localized hiring struggle into a system-wide vulnerability. Keeping this network running relies on a highly specialized group of people on the ground. The core of this group is the trackman. These workers inspect, install, and repair the heavy physical components of the track. They spend their days checking the physical condition of the steel rail, replacing worn tie plates, and securing the spikes that hold the system together. Working alongside them are railroad welders. When a steel rail cracks or wears thin, these specialists join new sections of rail using thermite or flash welds. This is not standard construction welding. It is high-precision metallurgical work designed to ensure that continuous welded rail can withstand millions of tons of rolling pressure without snapping. Together, these workers form maintenance of way, or MOW, crews. Their responsibilities extend far past the steel rails themselves. They manage the entire right-of-way, including the heavy wooden or concrete ties and the crushed stone ballast that supports them. This requires highly specialized physical skills. Crews use tamping machines to pack the stone ballast tightly under the ties, eliminating hidden air pockets. They perform gauging to measure the exact distance between the rails down to a fraction of an inch, preventing catastrophic wheel climb incidents. They use manual instruments and geometry tools to inspect for invisible wear. For generations, these skills were passed down directly on the ballast, where experienced hands taught apprentices how to read the track by ear and feel. This is specialized manual labor, requiring years of experience to master. It is a world where a crew member's expertise is the only thing standing between a smooth running line and a catastrophic failure. When a rail network loses nearly a third of its track maintenance operators, the physical infrastructure does not collapse overnight. Instead, the system undergoes a gradual, invisible decline. Routine tasks slip down the priority list, replacing worn tie plates, tamping shifting stone ballast, and grinding down micro cracks in the steel rails are postponed. This is the beginning of deferred maintenance, a state where the network continues to operate day and night, but falls steadily out of its prime physical condition because there are simply not enough hands on the ground to sustain it. When the track degrades beyond standard federal safety tolerances, railroads must legally restrict operating speeds to prevent trains from sliding off the rails. These temporary limits are known as slow orders. A slow order forces multi-ton freight trains and passenger cars to crawl at 10 miles per hour or slower over compromised sections of track. While these restrictions prevent immediate disasters, they act as a chokehold on the entire network. A train slowed to a crawl delays its own cargo, jams the single-track corridors behind it, and disrupts freight schedules across multiple states. The true cost of these speed limits becomes clear when looking at the intense physical labor required to remove them. On a regional passenger scale, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority illustrated the impact of addressing these backlogs. By deploying crews to replace 250,000 feet of worn rail, they removed 220 individual speed restrictions, immediately returning 2.4 million daily rider minutes to the transit system. On the National Freight Network, which spans 140,000 route miles, the mathematical scale is far more severe. Understaffing leaves carriers unable to clear their mounting repair backlogs, causing slow orders to linger on main lines for months at a time. This backlogged work reduces overall carrying capacity, forcing railroads to alter how they run trains, which means moving cargo differently and much slower. The physical backbone of the American supply chain remains open, but it is forced to operate at a fraction of its design speed, turning a localized hiring struggle into a systemic barrier for the national economy. The starting pay looks exceptional on paper, but the physical environment where that money is earned quickly screens out those unprepared for the physical toll. A track worker's daily office is the railroad ballast, a harsh bed of jagged, unstable, crushed stone that shifts underfoot with every step. Working on this surface means spending 10 to 12 hours a day lifting steel tie plates that weigh upwards of 25 pounds, handling 80-pound joint bars, and swinging heavy spike mauls. This labor does not pause for weather. In the dead of summer, the steel rails act as massive heat sinks, absorbing the sun until they reach temperatures over 130 degrees. Workers stand directly over this radiating metal, breathing in the fumes of creosote-treated wooden ties. In the winter, the ballast freezes into a solid concrete-like mass, requiring pneumatic tools and brute physical force to chip away the ice just to reach a single damaged tie. The clock offers no relief. Because Class 1 railroads operate continuously, maintenance crews must work around the train schedules. This means the bulk of heavy maintenance occurs during night shifts, weekends, and holidays when commercial traffic can be safely rerouted or paused. Shift schedules are notoriously unstable. A trackman might work a day shift on Monday, receive an emergency call at midnight on Wednesday to repair a broken rail, and then find themselves scheduled for a 16-hour weekend shift. This constant disruption makes routine sleep patterns nearly impossible to maintain, leaving workers in a chronic state of fatigue. For many, the geographic isolation is the hardest part of the job. Many maintenance workers belong to mobile system gangs that cover vast territories spanning several states. These workers do not go home at the end of the day. Instead, they live out of highway motels, trailer camps, or specialized crew cars parked on remote sidings. They spend weeks, sometimes months, away from their families, traveling from one remote stretch of track to the next. The constant travel isolates workers from their families and communities, turning a well-paying job into a lifestyle that demands the sacrifice of family life. This extreme environment is where the training pipeline first begins to break. For a new apprentice, the transition from the classroom to the active rail line is a stark reality check. The recruitment brochures highlight modern machinery, high wages, and competitive benefits, but they rarely convey the physical shock of stepping onto the ballast at 3 o'clock in the morning in a freezing rainstorm. Apprentices must learn to handle high-pressure hydraulic tools, avoid heavy-moving machinery in near-total darkness, and maintain constant vigilance against safety hazards while exhausted. The combination of intense physical strain, sleep deprivation, and long-term isolation is why so many new hires quit within their first year, walking away from high wages to take lower-paying jobs that allow them to sleep in their own beds at night. The physical demands of the ballast are met by a workforce that is rapidly running out of time. Across the national network, the average age of a railroad worker now sits at 45. This demographic profile has historically skewed older than almost any other heavy industry in America, and the sector is now bracing for a massive wave of retirements. In 2025, an estimated 11,400 Americans turned 65 every single day, and the rail network is feeling the full weight of this generational shift. Even as federal rules phase in a higher full retirement age of 67, the reality on the ground is different. The median retirement age for these workers remains closer to 62. As decades of heavy labor push veterans to exit the workforce as early as they can. When an experienced trackman or welder retires, the railroad loses far more than a single head count. This trade relies on what engineers call tacit knowledge, a highly specialized, intuitive understanding of the physical track that can only be built through decades of hands-on experience. A veteran knows how to read the expansion of steel rails under a midsummer sun just by the subtle pitch of their curve. They can identify a hollow under a tie by the specific pitch of a tamping tool, or spot shifting ballast long before an automated sensor flags it. For generations, this deep expertise was passed down directly on the track, through daily mentorship. A senior worker guided the apprentice, teaching them not only how to maintain precision alignment down to a fraction of an inch, but how to work safely around heavy-moving machinery in near-total darkness. Today, with fewer young entrants arriving to replace retiring crews, this chain of hands-on learning is breaking down. This creates an environment where crews are not only smaller, but significantly less experienced. The departure of these veteran workers changes the entire system, leaving a younger, thinner workforce to manage a vast network without the generational knowledge that historically kept it safe. A common assumption is that a labor shortage can be resolved by a surge in hiring. On the railroad, this assumption fails. Training a qualified maintenance-of-way worker is a multi-year process that cannot be accelerated by classroom lectures or simulator drills alone. Producing a fully certified trackman or specialized rail welder requires a formal registered apprenticeship that typically spans 3 to 5 years. Under Federal Railroad Administration regulations, specifically 49 CFR Part 243, these trainees must complete thousands of hours of documented on-the-job training, pass rigorous safety-critical examinations, and earn specific regulatory credentials before they are permitted to work independently on active main lines. Historically, this lengthy process relied on a stable, highly functional pipeline. A new apprentice entered the system and spent years working directly alongside a veteran mentor. This daily, hands-on relationship was the primary engine of the craft, transferring the unwritten rules of track safety and precision adjustments directly on the ballast. An apprentice learned by watching how a senior welder preheated the steel, or how a seasoned operator adjusted a tamping machine to the exact density of the crushed stone underneath. Today, that engine is stalling, because experienced workers are retiring faster than new ones can be certified. The ratio of mentors to trainees has shifted. Apprentices are frequently placed on short-staffed crews where veteran workers are too consumed by immediate backlogged repairs to provide the steady, patient instruction required to pass down this tacit knowledge. This bottleneck is worsened by high attrition rates within the training pipeline itself. Recent data show that non-union programs lose up to 30% of their apprentice classes before graduation, as the reality of the work environment drives new hires away. When a trainee quits in their second or third year, the railroad loses thousands of hours of invested training time, and the pipeline must start over from zero. This structural delay explains why a sudden wave of recruitment cannot immediately repair a depleted workforce. The speed of skill acquisition is fundamentally slower than the speed of turnover. National surveys reveal that 75 to 81% of rail employers now struggle to hire and retain skilled labor, creating a structural deficit that runs deeper than empty headcounts. Even if carriers successfully recruit hundreds of new applicants tomorrow, those individuals cannot safely run heavy tamping equipment, perform high-precision thermite welds, or identify hidden subgrade track defects for half a decade. The consequence is an unavoidable lag. The physical network requires immediate care, but the human hands trained to deliver it are locked behind a years-long developmental curve that cannot be bypassed. In the late 2010s, America's Class I railroads began adopting a new operational strategy known as Precision Scheduled Railroading, or PSR. This management philosophy aimed to maximize efficiency by running fewer, longer trains, keeping locomotives and freight cars constantly moving, and cutting excess capacity. To Wall Street, PSR was a triumph of corporate efficiency, drastically lowering operating ratios and boosting profit margins. But on the ground, this model introduced a stark structural trade-off. It required a significantly smaller workforce to manage a system that was not actually shrinking. Under PSR, carriers initiated deep cuts to their workforces. Union Pacific, for example, reduced its administrative support structure by 30% by 2020 and furloughed 450 mechanical workers. Norfolk Southern eliminated 500 positions in 2019, targeting 3,000 layoffs by 2021. Government Accountability Office data shows that total rail headcounts fell by 5 to 10% between 2011 and 2021. These reductions extended directly to the tracks. The Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way employees documented an 18% drop in BNSF's maintenance of way workforce, which shrank from more than 7,000 workers in 2016 to around 5,800. Railroad management maintains that these cuts do not compromise safety. The Association of American Railroads points to industry investments of $23 billion annually in infrastructure and technology, noting that Class 1 derailment rates fell 17% from 2024 to 2025. They argue that automated inspections and better asset use allow fewer workers to maintain the system safely. However, rail unions and workers counter that the physical tracks still require the same volume of manual labor. They argue that trimming headcounts has simply shifted a massive workload onto smaller, overstretched crews, while forcing railroads to rely more on outside contractors. The structural result is a constant friction between the financial logic of lean operations and the physical reality of maintaining thousands of miles of heavy steel. On February 3, 2023, Norfolk Southern Freight Train 32N derailed in East Palestine, Ohio. The National Transportation Safety Board determined that the primary cause was a failed wheel bearing on the 23rd car. As the train moved, the temperature of this bearing rose to extreme levels. While wayside hot bearing detectors measured the heat, the warning systems and the communication of that urgent data did not reach the crew in time to prevent the derailment. By the time the alarm sounded in the cab, the bearing had already failed, sending 38 cars off the tracks. 11 of those derailed cars carried hazardous chemicals, including vinyl chloride. The resulting fire and the subsequent decision to vent and burn the toxic cargo forced the immediate evacuation of more than 2,000 residents. Families fled into the night, leaving their homes and businesses in a town suddenly covered in black chemical smoke. The emergency response was further complicated by a delayed transmittal of train consist information, leaving volunteer first responders without immediate knowledge of the hazardous materials inside the burning cars. 6 months later, medical studies of local residents still showed markers of physiological stress and chronic inflammation. The disaster in East Palestine became a clear national reminder of how fragile the rail system becomes when safety-critical systems are compromised. While automated wayside detectors and laser sensors are designed to catch defects, they are not self-sustaining. They require regular calibration, immediate human analysis, and physical maintenance. When inspection intervals are lengthened, and the workforce of qualified trackmen and signal technicians is thinned, the entire warning network loses its reliability. This gap between automated detection and human intervention creates a vulnerability that threatens more than rail operations. A single missed defect can lead to a derailment that displaces an entire community, pollutes regional water supplies, and halts economic activity across multiple states. Keeping a fully staffed workforce on the ground is the primary safety barrier protecting the public, the environment, and the national supply chain from catastrophic failure. The physical demands and unpredictable hours of track maintenance create a direct conflict with the expectations of the modern labor pool. While the average age of a railroad worker remains 45, recruitment campaigns targeting younger applicants consistently miss their targets. This friction stems from a practical misalignment of priorities. Job market data reveals that younger workers frequently value schedule predictability, geographic stability, and personal flexibility over high hourly wages. A career on the ballast requires the exact opposite. New recruits face unstable on-call shifts, mandatory weekend labor, and weeks spent living in roadside motels far from their home communities. These harsh lifestyle demands make rail jobs structurally unattractive, even with entry-level pay exceeding $31 an hour. While some young apprentices choose this path and commit to the grueling training process, they are increasingly the exception. Most potential recruits choose lower-paying local trades that offer regular hours and keep them close to their families. This practical choice leaves carriers struggling to fill entry-level positions, widening the labor gap at the very moment the physical network requires the most attention. The industry's primary response to this labor gap relies on automated technology. Automated Track Inspection, or ATI, uses laser arrays, inertial sensors, and high-speed cameras mounted on locomotives to scan track geometry at normal operating speeds. This allows carriers to collect vast amounts of data and detect alignment errors faster than any visual inspector walking the ballast. Similarly, high-speed ultrasonic systems scan the tracks at up to 25 miles per hour, using sound waves to locate internal fissures deep within the steel that are invisible to the naked eye. Yet these digital systems quickly run into physical limits. An automated sensor can identify a potential defect, but it cannot fix it. Every machine alert still requires a human inspector to walk the ballast, verify the findings, and apply professional judgment. More importantly, technology cannot perform the actual physical repair. When an automated scan flags a shifting tie, a deep ballast void, or a cracked rail, it still requires a human maintenance-of-way crew to operate the tamping machines, handle the 70-pound joint bars, and execute the high-precision thermite welds. In emergency situations such as post-derailment recovery or weather washouts, on-site human response is the only option. Recognizing this, railroads are bundling these technological upgrades with aggressive recruitment incentives. Carriers are offering sign-on bonuses ranging from $10,000 to $20,000 to attract fresh applicants. Yet these financial packages remain incomplete solutions. While a hiring bonus might pull candidates through the door, it cannot alter the grueling 12-hour shifts, the extreme weather, or the geographic isolation that ultimately drives apprentices to quit. Technology and incentives can optimize how railroads identify problems, but they cannot replace the physical hands required to keep the trains moving. We are left with a quiet crisis on the rails. The jobs pay well and require no degree, yet the tracks remain empty. As train lengths grow and maintenance crews shrink, the risk shifts from corporate boardrooms directly to our backyards. If we cannot sustain the people who maintain our physical foundation, we cannot sustain the economy built upon it. What do you think is the solution? Share your thoughts below.